Emerging from the murky darkness of yet another robbery in the lightweight division, I'm guessing you now understand the necessity of this particular video thumbnail. My fascination with mob stories led me to find characters that share similarities with some of boxing's up-and-coming stars in order to properly describe what is truly going on in the 135 to 140 pounds divisions. Before that, kindly note that it's very important to click that subscribe button at this very moment because it will give me the energy to go on this journey. The more you click on it, the more energy I get, like a video game character collecting trophies. Let me help you quickly across this bridge with a little bit of background story. So, there were traditionally 8 weight divisions in men's boxing: the flyweight division, the bantamweight division, the featherweight, the lightweight, the welterweight, the middleweight, the light heavyweight, and of course, the heavyweight division. More divisions were added, and the professional governing bodies now recognize a total of 17 weight classes, which had their current names established by the major boxing organizations in 2015. Of all these divisions, the heavyweight division, of course, has been doing the carry job for boxing in the mainstream. And for majority of the 50s till the 90s, most of the superstar names in boxing with the most anticipated fights were in the heavyweight category. In between that, the 80s saw the resurgence of superstar names in the welterweight to middleweight division, with the likes of Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, and Tommy Hearns. In the 90s, Julio Cesar Chavez, Roy Jones Jr., and in the 2000s, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Money Mayweather, and Manny Pacquiao. Today, while the heavyweight division has seen a resurgence in superstars like Anthony Joshua and, if you may add, Tyson Fury, it is however beyond the point of argument that names like Canelo Alvarez and Gervonta Tank Davis generate more buzz around their fights, especially in today's internet-based world. With names like Tank Davis, many boxing fans have come to pay more attention to the other exciting fighters in the 135 and 140 pounds divisions, and given the fight reactions after some of these shady fights, it ain't looking good, bruv. The 135 pounds division is the precursor to the 140 pounds division, which again is the precursor to the 147 pounds division, where the big sharks in boxing have always resided since the 90s. So it's easy to construct a lot of shady victories and duck maneuvers in the name of making fights bigger before taking them. You can liken the 135 and 140 pounds divisions to the murky waters of Wakanda in the Black Panther sequel just before Namor emerged to scare Queen Ramonda and Princess Shuri. In essence, these divisions tend to fall under the radar but are the launching pads for champions who eventually go on to establish a foothold in the historically stacked 147 pounds division. If the champions that emerge from these divisions fail to establish a foothold in the 147 pounds division, then their careers fall by the wayside. Recent names such as Adrian Broner, Mikey Garcia come to mind. However, if the fighter succeeds, you might get the Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, Manuel Marquez, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Terence Crawford, just to mention a few. At this point, I would advise that if you know absolutely nothing about the mafia, don't be perturbed, as I will be as simplistic as possible so that you not get lost on this journey. Gervonta Tank Davis, Pablo Escobar, the money man of the division. Pablo Escobar's reputation was that of a man that lives on his own terms, a deeply dangerous figure that did his best to do as much charity as he could to mask his true reputation. Tank Davis is as interesting and as vicious as they come. He needs no further introduction as a pain delivery man when called upon, like Ryan Garcia found out in their last fight. At the same time, Tank Davis cuts the figure of an innocent boy who just wants the simple things of life, as can be seen in a few videos where his true playful nature came out. Devin Haney, Lucky Luciano. This was the brain behind the structure of the mafia that would go on to control the New York organized crime scene for decades. The originator of the mafia as we know it today, Devin Haney worked his way up, making compromises by taking lesser percentages against George Kambosos twice, and scrapping past Lomachenko in what many still think is a dodgy win. For many, Haney's status is still suspect and he rarely gets the credit he deserves. Much like the calm Lucky Luciano, who rarely gets a mention aside from being the originator of the idea for 5 families, which further established the hold of the mafia in the world of organized crime. Much like Haney too, he holds the 5 belts in the 135 pounds division. Shakur Stevenson, John Gotti. With a dazzling smile, his good looks are an easy sell for cameras and stays coolly flamboyant, much like John Gotti rising through the ranks after the murder of Paulie Castellano. Shakur is touted by many to be a future greatest of all time, or the one with the most GOAT potential out of all of them. Much like Gotti, Shakur moves with a poise that exudes greatness and stardom, and like many say, you're either born a star or you're not. Even without a defining fight in the midst of the rubble in the division, Shakur holds weight as far as boxing conversations go. Teofimo Lopez, Sammy the Bull. He took on Lomachenko when everyone else was ducking him, and despite his missteps against Kambosos and the close shave versus Sandor Martin, he proved that once again he was indeed a stone-cold killer when he took Josh Taylor to the cleaners in his last fight to win the WBO belt after moving up to the 140 pounds division. Lomachenko, Paulie Castellano, the guy who built himself a castle atop the pound-for-pound conversation like Paulie's house on the hill, without much of a media personality, despite the fact that most of his metrics videos went viral. He's also the guy every other fighter on this list avoided for a majority of his career. His high-level skill display kept him on the pound-for-pound list for years, but his decline after Teofimo Lopez beat him sort of knocked him off. Lomachenko's display of extremely high-level skill made several opponents quit on their stool back to back to back.
You don't want to continue? No. Okay. They're stopping the fight.
Now remember, I described Tank Davis as Pablo Escobar, the money man of the division, and it is often said that if you follow the money, you will arrive at the answers, so it is only right to do so in this case. Like Pablo Escobar finding himself at home in a prison of his own choosing, Tank Davis has seemingly found a way to remain in the 135 pounds division without a belt and still dictate much of what happens in that division. There is no other rational reason why a Devin Haney and more recently a Ryan Garcia would drain themselves that bad to make a fight in the 135 pounds division, aside from anticipating a fight with Tank Davis. Make no mistakes, it is a dangerous fight for anyone, as Gervonta Tank Davis's power is devastating, but the promise of a big payday in a fight promoted by Floyd the money man Mayweather himself is enough to make any fighter drain whatever necessary pounds it is to make the weight cut stipulations. Even though Devin Haney has said he would never do a weight clause as was offered to Ryan Garcia, a fight with Tank still remains the juiciest offer anyone can get between the 135 pounds and 140 pounds divisions.
Laffy Taffy bites.
Remember I said Tank has found a way to keep himself at home in prison in an environment where he can dictate what goes on without needing to fight any of the other big names and still pack out those venues. The big question is, what has stopped Tank Davis from moving up to the 140 pounds division? Josh Taylor before now was featured on the pound-for-pound list since dominating the 140 pounds division, but Teofimo, in typical Sammy the Bull fashion, made the leap to decapitate the general right on his throne. Much like the mafia hit on Paulie Castellano, for those that don't know these names, you might want to write them down. Teofimo has now heard that Devin Haney is about to move up to fight for the WBO title, and has quickly rescinded his decision to retire, which begs the question, why did Devin Haney wait for Teo to retire before making his decision to leap into the 140 pounds division? And now, it remains to be seen if he would follow through on the back and forth that they've been having on Twitter to make the fight happen. And that being said, Lomachenko turned down Shakur Stevenson's offer, insisting that he still has unfinished business with Devin Haney. But in light of Devin Haney moving up, he might have to face the Shakur Stevenson music, which again, ladies and gentlemen, leaves us with Pablo Gervonta Tank Davis Escobar. What next? Isn't the prison of the 135 pounds division too small for a big fish like Tank Davis? I mean, now that Lomachenko has lost to both Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney, Tank Davis beating him now would not hold such a great significance, except if, of course, he knocks him out in cold, brutal fashion like the other two failed to do. Remember, Lomachenko is Paulie Castellano, whose ghost proved not to be dead after all. Haney is reluctant to take the rematch, while Tank Davis is also eager not to take that fight. My personal reasons, given the history, would be that Tank Davis is ducking Lomachenko again, but that's just me. If Lomachenko had been beaten clearly by Devin Haney, I believe that Tank Davis wouldn't mind pushing for the fight, seeing that Lomachenko is no longer the fighter he once was. If Devin Haney moves up to the 140 pounds division to challenge Teofimo Lopez, it means he will most likely not peel himself again to make weight at the 135 pounds division, except if of course he loses. And if he loses, will it be the best time to chase a fight with Tank Davis? Within all of this, if Teofimo Lopez goes on to beat Devin Haney, he would have cemented his place amongst the greatest of them 5 by beating 2 of the remaining 4 and also adding to the scalp of the dominant Josh Taylor, which he already has on his resume. However, if Teofimo Lopez loses and Devin Haney becomes a champion at 140 pounds, Teo might have to go the way of outsider Ryan Garcia, at least for a guaranteed payday. The big question, however, remains which of them will be dominant enough to solidify their foothold on the 140 pounds division and then go onwards to dominate the 147 pounds division, which is where everybody is basically waiting for them to come to. I personally think that Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia will find a way to fight next. It's a much bigger payday for Haney than Teofimo and also a lesser risk, except if of course he loses. While Tank Davis sits in his 135 pounds self-built prison watching what plays out on the outside, it is most likely that he keeps forcing everyone to come back down to fight him, since his infamous weight drain clause was also to even the balance in size and reach that his prospective opponents had as an advantage against him. Now, in light of all of this and the recently dubious majority robbery decision given to George Kambosos against Mark Hughes, I will go a step further to question the legitimacy of the records of many fighters whom we call legends today. In the past, it's like nobody was aware of what was truly going on in these divisions, as they barely had any superstars to bring attention to them. But today, as we can glaringly see from the fights between Tank Davis and Isaac Cruz, Devin Haney versus Lomachenko, Ishmael Barroso versus Rolly Romero, and the likes, there is indeed a lot of questionable decisions that must have gone the way of the favorable names in the division in the past. I will refer to Kambosos as part of the Bonano family. His name really doesn't hold as much weight as any of the others, but he has once again found his way to a belt. In all of this then, who am I? None other but Tommaso Buscetta, the first made man in the mafia to break Ometa, which is the code of silence. He single-handedly demystified the operational structure of the mafia and gave the federal agents a clear pictogram to the organization and level of criminality that they were up against. So in all of this, dear listener, who are you? You are the FBI. You listen to every single detail from the beginning to the end, and now you can put together that Rico case in the comment section. Thank you very much once again. Like, share, subscribe.